Hi guys, today we're going to talk about prayer. We just started our new series, Teach Us How to Pray. And we're going to be looking at the Lord's Prayer in Matthew chapter 6. And I don't know if your experience is anything like mine, but true confessions here. Prayer is hard. It sounds easy. It's have a conversation with God. But the reality that I face is that there's something that happens internally. There are obstacles that I have to overcome in order to connect with God in a real way. Now, I can fake it, and you guys can fake it, and we can all go through the motions. But if we really want to develop our spirits, if we really want to connect with the God who created us, then I think we're going to have to learn a few things about prayer, what it is, and how to do it. And so today, I want to go through the first line of the Lord's Prayer. We talked about this on Sunday, but here's the recap. The Lord's Prayer goes like this: Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. That's the first line. And the thing that strikes me about this is that the first thing that I see is a word, our. That I encounter God, not by myself, but I encounter God with the community of saints. And this is humbling to me because sometimes I feel like my issues are more important than my brothers and sisters' issues. And so I should be able to get my own private time with God. And what happens is I can develop an awkward pride around my own prayer life. And I can have this little self-pity party that I throw for myself that I say, God, no, I need your attention. And what ends up happening is that I try to dominate God's time. And it's humbling for me to encounter a God who encounters all of us, the community of saints, in communion, that he encounters us together. And he draws us. He's not singling out one kid at a time. He's actually drawing all of us, and he has the capacity to do that. And so the first thing that I see in this line and how Jesus teaches us to pray is that prayer is communal. That even though we might pray alone, we are never alone when we pray. And the second thing that I see that in this prayer is that Jesus teaches us how to pray. He says, Our Father who is in heaven. Now, the thing that strikes me about this part of the prayer is that we have a God who's outside of time and space, that he lives in heaven, that his almightiness, his greatness, his awesomeness is on display for all eternity, for all time in the heavenly realms. That his kingdom and the way his justice and mercy rolls is not like our kingdoms here on earth. And so when we go to God, we all of a sudden encounter this divine otherness, this being who is not like us. But at the same time, I'm captivated by the word Father, because what I see here is that God is a good Father, and that he invites us in to this new world, this world where everything is set right, this world of heaven, and he brings all of those gifts to bear in our lives. And so when we go to him, we're not going to someone who is just, maybe could possibly change things in our lives, maybe could do some transforming work. We're going to the God who created the cosmos, and yet at the same time, he's our good Father. And so there's this grand invitation into an otherness that is not anything like ourselves. And it's greatly humbling because all of a sudden now I have to see that this is not a God to be trifled with, but at the same time, it's a God that I can crawl up in his lap. And so not only do we see that prayer is communal, we also see that prayer is invitational. And it's an invitation to see life from a different perspective, from our God, the Father in heaven. The third thing that Jesus mentioned here is, hallowed be your name. Now, I don't know if you're like me, but I don't use the word hallowed very often, and people don't call me hallowed very often. And so I have to get through this. And basically the word is a word to mean holy praise. What we're doing is we should be creating a sports center for God, constantly going over his highlight reels, making his name great. We should see at the end of this an invisible little phrase that says, hallowed be your name, not my name. Because I don't know if you're like me, but one of my struggles is to make my name great here on earth. And I set up my life in such a way that I try to help people see me in the best possible light so that they'll praise me and say, hey, this is a great guy. But the reality is reversed when we go into prayer. When we go into prayer, what we find ourselves doing is giving God glory. We give His name all credit. And so what we are prone to do in making our own name great, we are designed specifically to do the opposite when we come to God in prayer. That we see His greatness and we make His name great. And so what I find at the end of this is this first line is that what God is really doing, or Jesus here is teaching, is that we are to cultivate a humility when we come to God. Now I know we don't start there, but when we engage God together and realize my issues are no different than someone else's and I'm in a community, I'm humbled. When I realize that I'm engaging a God who's outside of my reality but yet inserts Himself as Father and welcomes me, and He welcomes all my stuff, I realize this is too good to be true. And then finally, when I see that our goal here is the priority in prayer is to make God's name great, not my name great here on earth, is that I'm just completely humbled. And it's the posture that Jesus says, if you want to connect with God, if you want to really develop this relationship, this dependent oneness on Him, that it starts with cultivating humility. So here's my challenge for you this week. My challenge is to use this first line and to begin to pray at your dinner table. Pray with your family. Pray on your own in your devotional times. And just begin to reflect on the communal nature of our prayer life. To begin to see the invitation that God as Father, yet larger than life, bigger than the whole cosmos that He made it, invites you into His kingdom. And then finally, to find ways to make God's name great. Begin playing and replaying His Sports Center highlights of all the great things that He's done. And just see how that affects you throughout the day of taking on that humble posture. So this is the first installment in the series, Teach Us How to Pray, and it is to cultivate humility in our prayers.